Okay everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to use the pen tool. This is one of the most daunting tools in all of Illustrator. If you've talked to anybody that's used Illustrator before, I guarantee you it's one of the hardest things that they've messed with. But I'm here to set your mind at ease and show you a couple of tricks on how you can use the pen tool, not only to your advantage, but how to do it in an easy way, and show you the way that I was taught how to use it. So when would you want to use the pen tool? Well, there's going to be a point where you're going to be trying to do custom shapes, like we talked about doing these circles and using the Pathfinder tool and doing basic shapes. But at some point, if you look at something like the flames here, at some point you're going to have to do a custom shape that cannot be done with basic shapes. And that's where the pen tool comes in. And if you master the pen tool, I always tell other students that I've had in the past, that the pen tool, if you master that, you could pretty much draw anything in Illustrator if you want to, if you set your mind to it. Take some practice. You're not going to get it right away. It's going to be frustrating. But if you just learn the way that I'm going to teach you how to do this, it can go smoothly. And once you practice enough with it, it's like riding a bike. You'll pick it up and you'll be able to take the ball and run with it. So here we have our sketch of our little grill here. And I'm going to attempt to draw this flame, and I'm going to use my drawing as a reference point to be able to do that. Now again, I don't want to trace over the flames and copy the mistakes that I've made with my hand and draw exactly what I see here. I want to make sure my lines are clean and all my curves have smooth edges to it. So but before we get into drawing that flame, I want to show you exactly what the pen tool does. So with the pen tool selected, it's the fifth tool down in your toolbox. You want to make sure you have the pen tool selected. If you click and hold, that you don't have the add anchor point, delete anchor point, or some of these other tools that are listed here, that you do indeed have the pen tool. When you have a shape that you're about to begin and you haven't yet begun to draw with the pen tool, you're going to see a little asterisk next to your pen icon. That's telling you that the pen is free of being attached to anything that's been drawn. And here's what I mean by that. If I click with my pen tool one time and I move my cursor away, you'll notice that the asterisk is gone. So now I know that I'm attached to the beginnings of an actual path that I'm creating, or a vector path that I'm creating with my pen tool. And you'll see the first anchor point is here. And if I hover over that anchor point, you'll see a little minus icon, which will allow me to delete that anchor point if I want to, if I clicked on it. But I don't want to do that. I just want to show you first how to start off by making a straight line. So the pen tool is easy. Your first click is always going to be a click and release, and then you're going to move your cursor over and click again to where you want the end of that particular segment to go. And you're going to see a line or a stroke appear in between those two anchor points. And that is all dictated. If you saw my line tutorial, that's all dictated by the size of the stroke that you've set and the color that it's going to be. Now I can keep clicking around this, and if I hold shift, it's going to make my lines straight. And I can keep going around and end up back at the beginning, and I'll end up with a rectangle. And you'll notice when you go back to where you started and you click the first anchor point, you'll notice a little circle appear. And what that's telling you is you're hovering over the first anchor point and you're about to close your shape up. So if I click and let go, I've created a rectangular shape with 4 anchor points. Well, that's not any fun, because we can just do that with our rectangle tool, right? We want to do some interesting shapes with our pen tool. So where it really gets fun is when you do curve segments. So we talked about a second ago how to do a straight line. Your first click is always a click and release, but if you want to make this a curve, your second click on a curve segment is going to be a click and a pull. And that will bend your line. So if I pull down, it's going to bend my line up. If I were to pull up, it's going to bend my line down. Now, if at any time you just want to create a line with your pen tool and you want to detach yourself from the path that you're currently working with, hold down the control key, and I think it's the command key on the Mac, but hold down the control key for Windows and just click anywhere on your artboard, and it will let go of that particular path. You'll see the asterisks appear and you can begin to draw the next segment. So if I click and pull up, it's going to bend my line down. Now the part where it gets difficult is if I want to do a curved line to a straight line and I click, it's going to bend the line still because it still thinks that this anchor point, the second anchor point I put down, is a curved segment anchor point. So there's two different types of anchor points. There's corner point anchor points and curved segment anchor points. So you want to keep that in mind. Now the trick that I learned, and I'm going to Control Z and undo that, to go from a curved segment back to a straight line is to simply click on the anchor point that I just put down. What that's going to do is it severs off one of these handles and allows me to go to a straight line again. So to repeat what I'm saying, you click, start your shape, click and pull, make a curve segment, go back over the anchor point you just put down and click on it, and then you can go to a straight line again, which is really important because a lot of people run into issues where they're doing a curve segment, and then when they want to go to a straight line, if they want to curve it back the other way, when they click, it's going to curve their line. And then they go in with the direct select tool, the white arrow, and they try to move these handles perfectly and get this all straight. And as you're trying to fudge around with this, it's going to bend this line the other way because this anchor point's dictating all that. So you don't want to get into the habit of trying to work with the pen tool that way. So now I'm going to start drawing with this idea in mind of how I'm going to use my pen tool. And you can see this goes from curved segment to straight line again. So this corner right here, where it's going to go from a curved segment to a straight line, would probably give me a problem if I don't click on that anchor point. So I'm just going to pick a spot that I can start drawing on this, this flame. I want to get zoomed in really far so I can get really precise with the pen tool. Grab my pen tool, make sure I see the asterisk so I know I'm starting a new shape, and pick any one of these tips, anywhere there's a corner to begin drawing. So for example, if I were drawing this, this grill lid, I would pick either this corner or this corner to begin. On the flame, I can pick this corner, this corner, this corner, this corner, or this corner to begin. So I'm going to go ahead and start on this corner, and I'm going to click and go to the next corner and click. And it's just going to make a straight line, which is exactly what I want because that's going to be in line with the top of the grill. Now the next segment from here to here is going to be a curved line. So the way that I decide to change or to stop my curve, because I'm not going to be able to get a smooth curve through here if I go to the next corner point, I want to find the point at which the curved segment changes directions. So you see here it's curving down and it begins to start to curve in the opposite direction right about here. So that's where I'm going to set my next anchor point. So I'm going to click and pull up because I want my line to go down, and it's going to pull that particular line segment in the direction I want it to go. Now if you find that it's not actually fitting in very well in that particular segment, you can actually make the curve segment a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go Control Z and go down a little bit further away from that and try to click and pull so it wraps into that part of my tracing real nice. So that looks good. I've done a curved segment. I want to go back the other way, so I'm going to click and pull in the other direction. And what that's going to do is create a nice smooth transition between these two curves. Now I didn't click on this anchor point because I'm not going back to a curved a straight segment. I'm going back to a curved segment. So now I'm changing directions to go into do this part, and you can see the line sweeps down and it gets to about here. Now what I could try to do, just to show you what I mean, is if I click and pull, I'm going to end up with this problem. And that's because I have a corner anchor point and not a curved segment anchor point. So when that happens, you want to click on the anchor point and sever off this handle on the outside just by clicking on it. And there we go. Now I can change directions and go back the opposite way. So I'm going to start here and pull. And then I'm going to go over here and pull because I'm still going in that direction. Now if you find that it's really tweaking it out here, you can grab the white arrow tool and try to fix that by pulling in the handle for that particular anchor point. When that's done, you grab your pen tool. Make sure you click back on the end of the anchor point that you set down, and you can start to go back in the opposite direction by clicking and pulling. Now, here's where I'm talking about. You're going from a curved segment to a straight point. So you're going to need a corner anchor point here. I like to click right on that anchor point and sever off that handle so I can go back to a straight line. So now I'm going to go to the very tip and click and finish my flames. Now at this point you can go in and tidy things up with your white arrow tool by clicking on anchor points and adjusting those anchor points. You can click on anchor points and adjust these handles to kind of get things under control and under wraps. Now, after I'm done drawing something like this, what I'll typically do, if you'll notice on our drawing of our final logo here, is I don't have any strokes on this. So all that I have is a red fill. So zooming out on that, I'm going to click on my final shape and switch it to a fill. And so it's going to look a lot neater without that stroke on there, because that tip of that anchor point was pulling the stroke way out here. So that's pretty much how the pen tool works. Remember, if you're going from a curved segment to a straight line, you lay down the anchor point with your pen tool. The first click is always a click and release. You do the curved segment, release. Make sure you're working in stroke mode. And then once your curved segment's done, click on the anchor point you just laid down, and you can go back to a straight line again. And also curve it back the other direction if that's what you want to do. And that's it. Practice will get you better at using this, so make sure you practice this as much as possible.